Hi, I'm Tiffany Guarnaccia, the CEO of Kite PR. I'm here for the latest edition of Modern Mentorship, our Young Lions edition. Our guest today is Harsh Kapadia. He's the Chief Creative Officer for Grey India. He's just been announced in this role. Welcome today. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm excited to be here. Thank
Tell
you
us
for having me.
thanks so much. Tell us a little bit about your new role.
I think I've just started. It's day two for me. And I've taken on the challenge to, push the boundaries and the creativity in the Indian market, pretty much where I started. And it's really exciting to join, a coveted network like Gray. And it's also really exciting to come back to WPP after a little break.
That's fantastic. And, it's all about creativity, as you mentioned, and it's such an exciting time in the industry. And as we're a part of Young Lions, we're really looking at how we find inspiration and how we think about mentorship. So, when it comes to mentorship, how have you found the right mentors in your career to get to where you are today in such an amazing role?
So, to start with, mentors have been really important for my career. And where it all started was, I think in my first job, I probably stumbled into the right bosses and the right people around me, back in India where, I was mentored by them. In fact, I just reached out to one of my mentors who was my mentor back in the day in India. And I'm going to catch up with her, hopefully next week now that I'm back in Mumbai. She also said she has been following my career since. And when I wanted to pick her brain about even potentially doing this opportunity, like, I knew I had the right person to call to. So I think sometimes the mentors just come to you because you happen to work with them, or you report into them. And then sometimes you have to find your mentors because in the business of creativity, there is no wrong answer. It's about what aligns to your taste, who inspires you, what are the things you want to learn. And I don't think you also want just one mentor, because you want to learn different styles of working, you want to learn different styles of thinking, and you want different POVs, because when it comes down to your career, you don't just want to take one advice, but at the end of the day, you need to know which advice you want to go with, and not confuse yourself with a lot of advice either. So sometimes it comes from, like I said, they just stumble around into your ecosystem. And sometimes you have to go seek them because that's who you aspire to be, or the type of work they're making actually inspires you, makes you jealous, and you want to get to the bottom of that. And sometimes mentors could be people who are more senior than you. They could be people who are not as senior as you and, are doing something different that you might want to learn from.
That's such a great point. And it really, to me, means that you need to be thoughtful about how you kind of curate the voices that are around you and how you curate your network of mentors based on where you want to be, based on your North Star. And it's fantastic that in the industry, you've found so many voices to lean on and so many different perspectives. I know you mentioned you started early in India, you've lived in 4 different countries, and now you're back in India in your new role. That is so inspiring. Can you tell me a little bit about how you find inspiration and kind of based on that, what does that mean for you when you're thinking about shaping teams?
hmm So I didn't start in typical ad school. So that already kind of made me nervous when I started at first, because everyone around me had come from either an art school or an ad school or journalism school. And I was like, I don't know anything. Like, I don't know the rules. And I was very lucky to have my first ECD, Anirudh, who basically, and Joe, who, pretty much just gave me the briefs and said, just come up with stuff. And I never knew what's right and what's wrong. It was just about coming up with ideas, and that evolved into me getting the confidence to do more. And over time, it just became my thing. I was partnered with the right writer at the time, and I learned a lot of my art direction from studio, and I had no formal learning, which is why then I went to do my master's in Australia, and coincidentally ended up getting a job with JWT Australia, where I also found more mentors. And they really shaped me into the Aussie way of working, and how culturally the two countries are so different, whether it be work culture or even the type of thinking you do or the type of work you do and the types of briefs and how you respond to those briefs. That's where it all happened. And then over time I got exposed to Asia leaders for the network, and then I got exposed to the global leaders, and then I got pulled into some global projects, which then gave me access to some of the New York ECDs, the global CCO, And at the time, you don't realize how lucky you are to get access to, and I'm just taking this back to when you're junior. When you get access to people, you got to just take advantage of it and pick their brain and take understand from them and actually observe them more than anything else. Because I feel like some people just freeze when you get time with people. They don't really know what to ask or what to get into. Like, don't pressure yourself. Just try to understand them. Just try to learn them, and somewhere you'll learn something that applies to you as well.
That's such a great point, and I love how you pulled it back to you had a little bit of a non-traditional start, or didn't feel like you had maybe the same education that someone else might have had. And I feel like a lot of us face that, right? Like we're always comparing ourselves to others. We're always like feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, especially when you're going into a new role or you're looking
Mhm.
for a new opportunity. And it comes back to finding that inspiration and really kind of leaning on who you are as an individual and that creativity. Do you have a
Mhm.
philosophy when you're hiring and when you're shaping teams for how you're thinking about pulling those teams together to kind of create the right mix and right individuals? Is there something that you're looking for, a philosophy that you're using?
Yeah, I think this initially got inspired a little bit from my own career, moving different countries, and that meant as I kept going, I kept absorbing different cultures, and I think that was really key as well. It wasn't just about moving countries; it was actually living them and actually embracing them, and yet not letting go of my own roots, and applying how my own roots would then mix up with the next country, and then pick up those two countries and mix up with the next country, and being surrounded also by people from different cultures. At some point, you almost realize where someone who's always worked in Australia versus in India versus in the US or the UK or across Europe, they bring a certain stuff to the table. They may have different ideas, but how they get to them might be different. How they take them to the finish line might be different. And so what I also learned was can't be done is never really an answer. You just have to find into the right culture to make that can't be done into can be done, because we all grow up with different limitations in our environment or different advantages in our environment, right? And if you're just expecting that one team to deliver for you every single time, you're almost getting the same solutions, if you will, to make things happen, right? But when you start mixing different processes and different culture, sometimes it can be challenging. But when you get that right, suddenly what couldn't be done now suddenly could be done, because someone's going to tell you, well, I know someone back here who can do it for me, or I know how we used to do it in a completely different culture, right? And then you try and apply to that, and I think some of that even applies to creativity, production, strategy, right? Like, you think about it on how mixed the world is today, and how do you then apply that insight of how they behave and how that shapes you into ideas. So curiosity, mixing cultures, and all this then eventually somewhere led me to coin this term called cultural MacGyverism. And if you're familiar with MacGyver, who pretty much takes two different, completely unrelated objects, puts them together, and gets out of any situation, I see that with talent. If we can figure out combining completely different minded talent, whether it's based on their skill set, their background, their socioeconomic background as they grew up, um, even different abilities that they might have, or different challenges that have faced them in life. You combine them differently, and they're going to come back with completely different answer than rather than combining two like-minded people.
I absolutely love that. And the term, when it comes back to turn what can't be done into what can be done, that perspective is so inspiring. And I'm sure a lot of those young minds are going to take that to heart. Well, I know you've shared a lot of great insights and hot takes. I want one more because everyone is asking about AI. Of course, I had to ask about it. Um, Young professionals, when they're thinking about AI today, how should they be thinking about it as a part of their career?
Embrace it. You have to embrace it. I know there's a lot of dialogue. I mean, I've been asked about it many times if I'm worried about AI replacing my job. AI is not going to replace my any of our jobs, to be honest. It will evolve our jobs. Yeah, if you don't embrace AI, it might replace your job. But at the end of the day, there's the A stands for is artificial, right? And I think what it's going to do is it's still not going to be, it's still not going to allow to replace human intelligence. It's going to treat it more like your partner. And listen, I think AI is also used very loosely at the moment. There's so many types of AI, there's so many forms. I think if you really understand it, it's actually going to help you come up with ideas that you couldn't do before, or you could do it faster, or you could do it in a way that is different, right? And I think that's the opportunity that we need to look into. We might be able to expose it to ways that we were not exposed to earlier. Today I can be sitting and, be insight mining on ChatGPT, but then also creating experimental styles in a mid journey, right? To then take inspiration, and then maybe that leads to a different idea because I observed something different. And I don't think it's what I'm saying is copy, because I think there's a lot of plagiarism convos going on. There's a lot of legal convos going on. I'm more talking about learn the tools, understand the tools, but don't get so obsessed with one tool, because, we are no longer in that digital era where things take 5, 10 years to evolve. Before you even know it, you've already moved on to the next thing. And I think that's going to be really important, is you having a pulse on a wide range of tools. And just as a creative, also don't limit yourself to just the creative AI tools. There are a lot of operational AI tools that are being used, and they may sound boring, but if you actually understand them right, you could apply them to creativity.
That's such a good point. And just in a broader sense, really thinking about how you can experiment, how it applies to creativity. And really, as I've thought about it, looking at technology and AI as an enabler and not as the enemy. Well, it's certainly an exciting time. I'm also really excited for the Young Lions and to really get a taste of all of the creativity and new ideas that are coming out from that group. Why are you excited about the Young Lions this year?
I'm excited selfishly because it keeps me on my toes. It's the talent that someday is going to replace, us, more than AI. So it keeps me on my toes to have my pulse on what, young talent is doing today, and what they're going to push for. The other thing for me is, you know, talented people should be mentored, and talented people should be guided. And we should be passing on our knowledge as we've learned over time. I mean, as I said, my career was built from that knowledge that was passed to me, and I still see that continuing to happen. So, it's one of those things. I don't say it's a responsibility. That's a pretty cliche thing to say. But I actually do think selfishly, mentorship actually helps the mentors as well, not just the mentees.
Yes, that is such a great perspective. And thank you for sharing all of the insights that you have today. I appreciate you being here, Harsh. Thank you again.
Well, you're welcome. And, thank you for having me. It's been fun.